Amico is in the news. The Intellivision Amico. Does this ring any bells? Does this do anything for you? I'll give you a second to try to remember this. They were going to make a video game console for families to enjoy. And they raised funding. Whatever. I'm not going to recap the entire history of the Intellivision Amico, but suffice to say, it's been a bumpy ride, and they still have not produced anything for anyone. For all of the pre-orders they took for all 12 of them, however many, 400 people that bought an Amico, or whatever. But also the people, the investment money they went out to try to raise, the top to bottom, it has been one of the most slow motion car crashes this industry has seen in the last, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. They have issued another update via email. I guess this is going, I don't know who this went to, if this was people that signed up for a mailing list, or if this is the people who pre-ordered, or some combination of that. But it is headed with an Intellivision Amico news and updates graphic, and this is from the CEO of the company, Phil Adam. You remember Phil Adam stepped into the role when Tommy Tallarico stepped down. I'm going to read this whole thing because I am impressed with how long this email is and how little this email says. It is one of the most circular, empty. It's a piece of work for sure. The last 18 months since becoming the CEO has been an extremely difficult time for the Intellivision business. Already right off the bat, saying, since I became the CEO, it's been an extremely difficult time for the Intellivision business. It was a tough time before, but that's a bad way to word this. It's like, ever since I took the reins, it's been fucked. Like, dude, give yourself some credit. It was fucked before. All right. A long list of disappointments from both inside and outside of the company had to be taken head on. During this time, we laid off a large portion of our staff, restructured our management team, and began the process of reevaluating every aspect of the business, which included the path that lay ahead for Intellivision. What we have distilled down from countless hours of self-assessment is that we are, or more accurately, wish to be, in the business of creating a living room experience that brings people of various ages together in group play. It is the experience between people sitting in the same room that will be our primary measure of success. This, first and foremost, comes from offering great content. As an entertainment business, do you follow this? Are you following this? As an entertainment business, we realize that creating great content requires world-class partners and a focus on strategies where we can effectively achieve the necessary level of excellence to succeed. To this end, we will be announcing a string of new partnerships that will not only help bring fun and innovative content that captures the Amico experience, but also bolsters and celebrates our content's appeal by 1. Licensing our IP to development partners who have product pedigrees that are creatively aligned and best poised to bring something great to market. 2. Leveraging our IP in ways that ensures delivery on Amico, but additionally expands our content to entirely new audiences Intellivision would otherwise be unable to reach. And 3. Acquiring new IP that embodies Amico and fits our strategic focus. This will include licensing IP for other platforms where it makes sense to do so. Our commitment to delivering a unique and innovative platform that brings people together has not wavered. What has changed is our philosophy on how to deliver that experience. The business environment is quite different from what it was in 2018 when the original Intellivision business plan was put together. We cannot solely be dependent on a traditional hardware console business model. The cost and time to scale such a business is too great. This is something that you knew years ago. Or if you didn't, We must be more creative in how we deploy our intended entertainment experience, not only delivering a better experience for our customers, but also reducing the time and cost to scale the business. Okay, let me just take a break here. We want to assure our fans that shipping a console remains part of our product strategy. The development and hands-on testing of our pilot units have been a successful step forward. As a testament of this progress, we are pleased to share with you this video of a father and son playing Shark Shark on one of the pilot units in their home. I don't have the video in front of me, unfortunately. Shark Shark. As part of our expanded strategy, we also plan to bring the Amico experience to other hardware platforms, starting with mobile devices under the name Amico Home. Amico Home will dramatically reduce the hardware footprint needed to enjoy Amico games and provide more developers the opportunity to explore the creative potential of in-room multiplayer games with our innovative physical and smartphone controllers. The broadening of the talent pool will bring new ideas and gaming that will shape the future of Intellivision and our place in the market. Okay. So let's see. They're going to start bringing games to phones under the name Amico Home. You could have called the console Amico Home and brought the... Or you could have just called it Amico, and I don't think anyone's going to get confused by that. I don't think it'd be like, well, we've got to differentiate the mobile versions from our console version. Like, no, you don't. No, you don't. So, okay. So they're saying by putting our stuff on phones, we're going to provide more developers the opportunity to explore the creative potential of in-room multiplayer games. So let me get this straight. You are going to make, okay, your whole pitch, the entire pitch for the Amico was, and then they say it up front, and then reiterated that it is still the pitch to make in-room multiplayer, couch co-op, whatever it is, local multiplayer is the thing that they are going for. And to do this, they're going to put it out on mobile. Small screen, not something that people really, not something that's widely known for local multiplayer. Not to say it's not doable. You can certainly play phone games together in a room. You can, whether it's Bluetooth or you can just do it over the internet anyway. You can certainly do that, but it is not playing to the strengths of those platforms particularly well. You end up with a Jackbox sort of concept there, but again, Jackbox has the benefit of the thing that is connected to the television that everyone can see, and they are only using their phones as controllers, which that is the core of the entire Amico pitch is, hey, there's a thing happening on the TV, but also you have your own little screen, whether it's your phone or whether it's the Amico controller. Then, maybe that doesn't matter. Bryn asks, do you think this means they're probably going to replace the Amico stuff so that the console just ends up being an Android phone in a box with two cheap Android handsets for those controllers? That's already what it was. It was already that. I'm pretty sure the Amico hardware was very much not far off from just being some low-end Android shit, right? So this is just kind of, that was the pitch all along. It goes on. We are excited for this future and what it means for bringing the Amico experience to the public. Those who supported Intellivision early on helped set the foundation for all that we have been able to achieve. And we are truly thankful to you all. In the coming weeks, those that have maintained a deposit Oh, those who have maintained a deposit will be able to sign in and verify their spot on the priority list, the Amico Club list. The Amico Club list will be used as the primary mechanism to prioritize access to special products, early access to new games, and other unique offers. More details to follow. With your $40 love donation, you're securing a position on that rocket ship that we're going to blast off all the way to heaven. Get your food buckets now. So send in your love offering for this food bucket. We will send you this food bucket and this copy of Shark Shark. You will secure your spot on the club list. Tommy's special club list. And then it closes out. Again, we thank you for your patience and support as we chart a new course for Intellivision and establish our own unique position in the vast and vibrant video game industry. And again, that's from Phil Adam, who's the CEO of Intellivision. Now, this is not surprising, right? I think surprising is to actually hear at all from Intellivision at any point. Like the idea that they are still kicking is actually surprising, because they had gone quiet for so long. You're like, oh, maybe this thing's just done for good. But you know, for months, if not years before that, it very much felt like the path for them was going to be putting these games out on phones and maybe PC and maybe even console or Switch or whatever, just to try to get some money coming in, because they obviously didn't have the funds to go and manufacture and send out to retail to launch a console in any meaningful capacity. So really the only way for those games to get out to anyone ever, and some of them were damn close to complete, if not actually complete, from my understanding of it. So they were going to at some point have to find a way to get those games running on some other platform just so they could get out there and sell them and get some amount of money coming in that, you know, creditors will probably want at this point. Or some of the investors that signed, like that one investor that signed that super sweetheart deal where they get X number of dollars off the top of every Amico sold or something until they're paid back. Well, you don't have to pay them back if you're not selling consoles, right? Aha! Got him! So all of that, like, this is a really long-winded way of saying we're going to put our stuff out on phones, which everyone I think kind of assumed was eventually going to have to be the approach for them anyway. I think for me, the part where this breaks down conceptually is the idea that they're like, we're going to put our stuff out on phones and we're still committed to that same room multiplayer experience. Like, that's just, I don't feel like that's widely done. Jackbox was successful, but again, Jackbox has a centralized thing, whether it's running on a PC or whatever else. Like, there's still something on a television as a part of that process. So are they going to, like you need this to be as low friction as possible to succeed. And so if you're going to end up actually pitching like, okay, one of you, okay, you need, okay, someone take a phone and then AirPlay it to the television so that everyone can see stuff, and then set that phone down. You're not going to play on that one. That's the house phone. That's the TV phone. Now everyone take their other phones and connect to the game. And now we're going to play Night Stalk, Shark, you know, whatever you got. Cornhole. I don't see that being a thing. Those are just not hoops that normal people are ever going to jump through. The idea of getting things hooked up to a phone or hooked up to a television. So the games then need to be built for like, okay, it's going to be multiplayer, but everyone's looking at their own phone and everyone's following the action there, which is slightly different from, so, you know, the games would probably have to be retooled to a certain degree to work that way, because they probably were not initially built to work that way. And I don't know. It's a very long-winded way of saying we're putting our stuff out on phones. And I think some of this stuff is really licensing our IP to development partners who have product pedigrees that are creatively aligned and best poised to bring something great to market. I mean, they already did that. That's something that all like developers like Other Ocean, you know, like worked on games, did games for the Amico in some varying degrees of completion. There's all those, like, weren't like 9 games made by one team in Germany or something wild like that. Like, there are games in various forms of development, and some of them I believe were actually finished. And so, like, are they really going to get out there and license the IP all over again? And who's going to want to? Because, again, it's the Intellivision IP that we're talking about. I don't want to, you know, like, if we get to the core of this, we're talking about Night Stalker and Shark and a bunch of stuff that has really kind of been lost to time and has not a ton of, I don't view that IP catalog as having a ton of value, I would say. So like the whole thing feels like, okay, you're licensing out all these hot Intellivision joints. Like, come on, what are you gonna make? Poker? You have the mustache? Are you licensing out the ability to put a dot in the middle of a 0? Is that part of the IP? And then to say like, oh, this we're acquiring new IP that embodies Amico and fits our strategic focus. Really? You're going to go out and raise more money so you can acquire new IP and then do nothing with it? Or then license it back out to people that will then make it into phone games? Like, why would anyone trust you as the middleman for this? Why would anyone need Intellivision to be the middleman on that? It's and realistically, are they going to be able to go out there and raise enough money and have enough money when they, you know, they spend a lot of this message talking about like, oh, we had to lay off all our staff, and of course we know that the office shut down, and the people that leased them all the office furniture want their money back, and you know, all this, you know, they're not in a great spot. I don't think I'm being a fucking gaming racist over here to say that maybe the Amico fucking process has not been a smooth one. And so to say like, oh yeah, we're doing hot deals over here. Like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to shoot business guns until we're sitting on a gold mine. You know, like, it's not, it's the fucking Intellivision IP. Like, even in the best of times, what you had was the Intellivision IP. Like, what, I don't mean to be a dick to people who liked those games. But we're talking about, if we go back and look at the Blue Sky Rangers list of games, which I don't know if that's the full IP catalog that they control. And it's definitely not, because there's stuff like Dungeons and Dragons games and Tron games and other stuff like that obviously they don't control that stuff. But I'm saying, even, you know, even if you like the Intellivision catalog and like the Intellivision controller, which I think is a nightmare device. I just moved all my Intellivision stuff into my storage locker the other day. And so I was looking at all of it and just kind of like going, man. Let's see here. This following table lists all 125 cartridges released for the Intellivision. So what do we got here? Backgammon, Dungeons and Dragons, Treasure of Tarman, neither of which they own anymore, Armor Battle, Astro Smash, which, again, I don't want to levy anything at the quality of these games per se, because I liked Astro Smash just fine. But if you're getting out there and saying like, well, we represent some of the most fantastic classic IPs in the business, like Astro Smash, like, oh, okay, what is that? It's like a Space Invaders meets Asteroids, but not It's like not as good as Space Invaders or Asteroids, but if you had an Intellivision, it was really good. Okay. Auto racing. B-17 Bomber, maybe the most iconic game in their entire catalog. Bomb Squad. Boxing. Bump and Jump, which is not theirs. Burger Time, which is not theirs. Buzz Bombers. Checkers. The Electric Company Math Fun, and the Electric Company Word Fun, neither of which they own. Frog Bog. Horse Racing. Jetsons Way with Words, which they don't own the Jetsons. Kool-Aid Man, which they do not own. Las Vegas Poker and Blackjack. Las Vegas Roulette. Lock and Chase, which they don't own. Locomotion, which is a Konami game. Major League Baseball, which was also released as Baseball. Masters of the Universe, The Power of He-Man. That's not something they own. Melody Blaster. Mind Strike. Mission X, which is a Data East game that they don't own. Motocross. Mr. Basic meets Bits and Bytes. NASL Soccer, also released as Soccer. Basketball. Football. Hockey. Night Stalker, which was a cool game. I played it when they ported it to the 2600. Bowling. Golf. Pinball. Reversey, which is Othello. Royal Dealer. Scooby-Doo's Maze Chase, which they don't own Scooby-Doo. Sea Battle, which I think is that just a bootleg Air Sea Battle? Is that what Sea Battle is? I guess I can click on it. Oh, no, it's not. It's like a strategy game looking thing. Shark. Sharp Shot. Snafu. Space Armada. Space Battle. Space Hawk. Space Spartans. Star Strike. Sub Hunt. I'm going on a sub hunt. Tennis. Triple Action. Tron Deadly Discs. Tron Mazatron. Tron Solar Sailor. Obviously, they do not own the Tron IP. US Ski Team Skiing. USCF Chess. Utopia. Vectron. And World Series Major League Baseball. And then there's third-party stuff on this list also, but obviously, they don't own River Raid or Pitfall. They don't own Ladybug or Donkey Kong Jr. So that's not IP there. Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. I don't think the Intellivision company owns that. So if we assume that the Intellivision IP primarily comes from that list, there's not a lot there that you think of in a modern context. I think that you could look at there are games that are remembered out of the Intellivision library, like a Night Stalker and like Astro Smash and perhaps like Utopia, B-17 Bomber and some of this other stuff, but like I don't care. Like, you could market that with the full weight of the Intellivision name behind it. I don't think that there's a huge audience for those games that really cares. And so if you've reshaped those in ways that are going to be good modern games that you can play a local multiplayer thing, that's great. But it's not, but when you talk about this, the plan for Intellivision going forward is licensing our IP to development partners who have product pedigrees that are creatively aligned and best poised to bring something great to market. How do you get that stuff in front of people in a way that they're going to even notice it exists and doesn't get lost in a sea of like all of the other mobile stuff that's out there? Launching it as a console platform, as a thing you buy and do, at least gives it like oh, okay, you hook this up to your TV. I guess that makes it real. But if you're just like, here's a phone thing, it's 99 cents, or it's probably not 99 cents. or however they end up selling it, that just seems like it gets hard fast. I mean, the mobile industry, you don't need me to sit here and tell you that, hey, the mobile business, pretty fucking cutthroat over there, huh? And so putting these games or putting new versions of these games out on phones does not seem like something that is, it'll bring some money in. Some people will buy it. I will buy it out of a perverse curiosity to see what the fuck they've been doing for all these years. So that's one sale of every game you'll put out, guaranteed. I'll write it off. And then maybe eventually they try to bring this stuff to console or bring this stuff to PC, which then I think that kind of solves some of those issues where you're like, okay, now it's definitely hooked up to a television. And so we at least have that kind of shared single screen for this shared local multiplayer experience or whatever it is. So like it's just the idea that this is a pitch. Like I feel like anyone looking at this, especially if this is going to be something they're going to try to go out there and justify, hey, we need money to acquire new IP. Please throw more money into this burning trash can that we've got over here. Like anyone that does that at this point deserves it, man. Like, come on. Like they have had, I will grant you that they executed this plan at maybe the worst possible time to do it. And a lot of world factors, industry factors, whatever you want to call it, aligned against them, not through any fault of their own. But also the pitch was highly suspect, and everyone who took a look at the numbers on that stuff and what they were looking to charge for the games and what that would back into in terms of what the development cost could reasonably be in order to turn a profit or even break even. You just look at that stuff and go like, none of this makes any sense whatsoever. The numbers just don't work out the way that they are saying they're going to. And so I look at that and that's from a while ago now that those numbers didn't make any sense. So you look at what they're doing now and go like, okay, well, what have they done that has earned anyone's trust? Like, why would you, if you were a developer, why would you go license Intellivision IP? Well, like again, unless you're just like sick in the, and you're just like, I've got a B-17 bomber concept in my head that I know is going to be a multi-million seller, but we needs the IP. We can't just call it Bombing Run or Plane Factory. Like if it doesn't say B-17 bomber on the box, I walk. Like that doesn't. That team probably doesn't exist. So I look at those things and go like, this is okay. Like you're laying this out as like, sure, this is a thing you would love to do, but who would want to do business with them at this point with what their track record is? And like how much money do they owe creditors already? Like, if you are a developer and sign on to license this, like, are you ever going to get paid? Or are you paying them to license the IP and then paying them a per unit? Like what are they even trying to negotiate? If I walked in and said, I want to make Astro Smash for PlayStation 5, how much is it going to cost me to allow you to let me write the words Astro Smash on this JPEG that I'm uploading to the PlayStation back end? That can't. I have a very hard time believing that this is a business plan that will attract revenue or bring money their way in any meaningful. If they get something shipped, then yeah, okay. Then they sell some number of copies of games and some money does come their way, obviously, right? But they're like IP plans and some of the other stuff that they're talking about here, that just doesn't, nothing about that makes any sense to me. And again, I don't have access to the books, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't be able to fucking read them anyway. But nothing about this seems like like we realize that creating great content requires world-class partners. It certainly does. Intellivision does not seem like a world-class partner, and it doesn't seem like they're holding enough cards to be like, well, they seem shifty, but how else are we going to realize our dream of calling a game Frog Ball? Like, we want to make a checkers game, but we want to make it Intellivision checkers. We need to have the dot and the zero. If we don't have the dot and the zero, what game are we even making? You know, it just seems like an empty house to me. Like, they may own this IP, but like that, I don't think any of this IP is such a big deal. Like, if you wanted to make a new Frog Bog, just make it and call it whatever. And say, oh, we were inspired by this, this old classic game. And then don't say the name out loud, because it just feels like that these guys are days away from going like, what if we moved on to litigation? What if we tried to make money through lawsuits? So they're doing what they can. I good on them for doing what they can. I don't know. I wonder what we'll see and when we'll see it, if they even get far enough to where they are launching mobile games. And if any of this stuff comes to pass, even if their plans to say, hey, we're going to put this stuff out on phones, if they even get that done, I don't know. Maybe. There's no reason to think that they wouldn't do that, except for every other thing the company has done. And you look at it and go like, oh, yeah, they'll never get it together to actually make that happen. But if they're not doing that, then they're shutting down, right? Because there's really zero money coming in. A lot of people in chat talking about Tommy Tallarico. Footage surfaced recently of me standing next to Tommy Tallarico at a Midway event in 1999, being interviewed for Electric Playground. And I was surprised. I was like, because people asked like not that long ago, they were like, hey, do you know Tommy Tallarico? And I'm like, no, I don't. I couldn't remember if I had ever actually had a conversation with him. You know, it's one of those things where like a lot of people are all in the same place. If you listen to Game Boys to Men, the podcast available over at patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann, we had Dan Amrich on recently. And Dan wrote about games for decades. He started before I did, and worked at GamePro and everything else. And I was constantly in the same place as Dan, because we all got invited to the same 20 events every year and whatever else. But Dan and I had never really had a real conversation until we did that podcast. Because, you're there and you're working, you're just like, oh, hey man, what's up? And then you're just off to doing whatever's next. And so Tommy Tallarico being, he since he did that television show with Victor Lucas, he would sometimes be at some of that stuff. And I'm sure that so there's video proof that Tommy interviewed me about winning an NFL Blitz tournament, which is the context of what that video was, I guess. But that's not me trying to like burn Tommy Tallarico. I don't need to, it's just a case of like, I know I was in the same place as that dude all the time, but I don't really remember he and I ever having a conversation about much. It's not to say we didn't like have small talk or whatever. Like, yeah. And then this video surfaced. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess all right. I guess we have. Whatever. It's, yeah, I don't know. Just such a bizarre situation. And to have it resurface after months of being dormant, like, oh, by the way, Intellivision is still kicking around. Like, oh boy. So we'll see what happens to them, what they end up pulling off, if they can even pull anything off, and who is still a part of it. I mean, obviously, the story, the what seems like happened is that there was Tommy lost someone in his family, and around that time, was no longer the CEO of the Intellivision thing. This Phil Adam guy comes in. Phil Adam has been around the business quite a bit and done some things. He's not just some guy out of nowhere. And then I haven't really seen much of Tommy Tallarico at all. I don't know if he's still doing concerts or whatever, but now that just the situation with the Intellivision stuff led to a lot of people finally going like, oh, by the way, I was a musician on this tour, and you know, we were local musicians brought in for his video games symphony thing that he does or whatever it is, and they never paid us, or hey, they barely paid us anything, and they did this and that, and they treated us like this, and that there was just a lot of like nasty stuff around that. Of course, there've been a lot of videos trying to pull apart, because, you know, he's a guy who has claimed to work on a lot of video games, work on music on a lot of video games over the years, which I always found very weird, that someone who was working on video games was also reviewing them on television. I don't know if the rules are different in Canada or what, but that always seemed highly suspect to me. And now people are like finally pulling apart all of the stuff he says, where it's just like, some of it's just like on the surface, just like you look at it and go like, all right, man, that didn't happen. I was like, Mr. Miyamoto and I sat down and had a conversation about the Wii and did this. Like, all right, dude. Yeah. Yeah. H-Bomber guy has a pretty exhaustive video on the subject, that gets into the idea of like the guy who you think maybe did the music on Earthworm Jim perhaps didn't, and all of this other stuff, all of the other, like the long list of games where you're just like, oh yeah, Tommy Tallarico did the music on this. You're like, no, Tommy Tallarico Productions did the music on this, but he had people working for him that was doing which is not unheard of. There are plenty of musicians for TV and film that are just like, oh, you got Hans Zimmer? It's like, no, we got Hans Zimmer. We got the Hans Zimmer Corporation, and the, you know, people under him maybe wrote most of these melodies and didn't get credited or whatever. Like I'm not out here talking shit about Hans Zimmer. It's just like that was the first name that came to mind. But there's plenty of people in the creative in that end of the business that I've heard of situations like that, where, you know, people are kind of doing the work uncredited and whatever else. So so that was the first thing I thought of when people were saying, oh, Tommy Tallarico, his company did the music, but that doesn't mean he did the music. I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess. All right. Yeah, we'll see. I will see what happens with that stuff. I don't know. I want them to put something out. I want to see what they've been working on all this time. Like, that's the sick part about all this, is it's like, yeah, put out what you've been doing. Let's see what it is. Let's be able to judge it on its own merits and not have to, you know, not have to look at like pictures of office furniture that got repoed or whatever, you know, like all that bullshit that like you just look at and go, oh boy, you know, let's see what the games are. Let's let the rubber meet the road on that shit.